Hey, welcome once again to Hollywood Breaks. Keith and I are here with you, sharing our insights that we kind of capture in the industry along the way. I can see that Keith has changed locations. Looks like you're in a Philadelphia-esque location with brick and
Brick and
colonial
French
siding.
doors. Yep. I've returned to Philadelphia. That is true.
Looks beautiful, beautiful day. You know, like can't you feel the end of summer kind of hitting us here? And I'll say, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but this is that movie season that I kind of love, that beginning of the fall movie season. Like the good stuff's about ready to roll in. The Oscars are about ready to roll in.
Season, yeah.
I don't know if I'm feeling that this year. I think that it's hitting me early. It's a surprise because I don't have my infusion of summer movies under my belt.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's because we really haven't had a summer movie season. Like,
yeah.
it got pushed more or less to next year in a lot of ways, and the Oscar season's been extended, so it really is going to be. It's very different this year than it has been in years past, for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe that's my summer slump, is that I don't have the big box office movies that I.
Well, August is traditionally they say traditionally the dumping ground. So I don't know if you'd be going to the movies a lot in August anyway, Tim. But
no, it's the you're probably right. It's the one where we're all kind of putting our kids back to school and a little bit more distracted. But it's the change of season and the knowing that it's about ready to come. It's maybe like pre-Christmas season for the Oscar moviegoers because you know the good stuff's coming out.
Yep.
Well, hope all your season's going well and you're moving back and forth going well. You know, last week we didn't record probably because if you were like me, you were binge watching all the Emmy nominations.
Yes, had to get through all the Emmys. Yep. Had to watch all the shows so I could cast my vote. So
now, is this one of those things where we don't ask who we vote for? Kind of like the president, it's rude to ask, or are you willing to give up a couple of Emmy picks that you put out there?
I'm happy to put out the picks. I mean, I'll go first if that makes it easier for you.
And I maybe voted in 5 categories because I can only watch so much.
Yeah, I mean, you can only get through so much because it is a lot, and they don't give you a ton of time to vote. So I'll start with the biggies. So best drama, Succession got my vote. I absolutely adore that. I love that show. I think last season was by far the best on TV. The acting is spectacular. To be fair, I may have a little bit of bias since I worked for Murdoch for so many years, and it is somewhat Murdochian, and it's sort of telling a tale of a family of warring siblings and this grand, poobah sitting atop, very similar to the Murdochs.
Yeah.
And the Redstones. And it kind of plays into what we've talked about here, sort of the end of an era of the major media moguls. So that one got my vote. And then for comedy, I went with Schitt's Creek. Now, I have to be fair. I discovered this because a lot of people were talking about it because it was at the end of the last season. And I found the show absolutely hysterical. Of course, being a movie buff, I have a soft spot in my heart for Catherine O'Hara. I think she's a fantastic comedic actress. Loved her ever since Beetlejuice, and all the Christopher Guest movies. And, Levy is the same way for me. I think he's a great actor, and, his son's great. So those are my 2 big picks.
I love Succession. I think that that's probably everyone's biggest pick. There's no doubt that the drama on that show, what they're doing with it, maybe also they're appealing a little bit to us Hollywood people. I almost feel like La La Land had the same kind of appeal, like you live it out a little bit. Yeah. Succession feels very insider in presentation.
Well, that's why we started doing this. We want everyone to have the inside info.
That's exactly right.
We're playing up on that.
That's it. Right. Everybody needs this information. This is the game we're going to play.
Yeah, exactly.
The one I had a difficulty choosing between the 2. Well, so in the categories, I get to choose opening credits is one of the ones that we choose. And I'm not going to reveal that because all of them are good. And some of them are my clients. So I'm not going to touch that. But I'll say, what a great category this year. And interesting, the nominees, some of the traditional nominees weren't in the running.
It's so interesting because I and this might be a little bit of a segue, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. From a sort of a design perspective, the opening credit sequences are absolutely gorgeous for the most part. But I'm going to be honest with you. I miss theme songs. Like when they used to just have
like wasn't buddies kind of a thing.
I'm thinking like Golden Girls, kind of, Cosby Show, just like a great theme song that gets you psyched for watching the show. They don't do those anymore. I miss that. I miss sort of like, and
I guess the Friends song. I mean, that's Friends, like we all know it from.
That was really kind of the last one. Like think about Friends, Cheers, Frasier.
Yeah.
I mean, all had great. I mean, I think there's a way to combine the two. Like I think Cheers definitely sort of had a design to it. Showed all those kind of paintings that you see in a bar, and with the great theme song. Friends was very sort of like traditional theme song with just the cast at a fountain. So I mean, it's like, but I don't want to.
That's a good call. My kids love the TV series Psych. I think it was an AMC show. It's on Amazon, and it's kind of a quirky, funny comedy, Sherlock Holmesy kind of a thing, right? Kind of goofy.
Yeah.
And they have their beginning, and as we watch it, we sit down and watch it. We all kind of sing along to the theme song. There really is something that attaches the song and that little intro segment.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think most of these nominees are drama series. Like that's the group there. But I'll say it's pretty interesting. Some of them blend together. You almost feel like, oh, we all know what it looks like, and you choose along the way. I love the ones that break away and are unique, and that's where my choices came from.
Yep.
The one I had a hard time choosing between was what was the drama series category. And I had a difficulty choosing between the show Unbelievable, which is about a serial killer and these two women cops that got together did it.
Yep.
Such a man, oh man, I could not stop watching it. Great.
Yep.
And Mrs. America. I truly loved that Mrs. America. It almost had, the protagonist was the conservative, and she was dealing with what it meant to be a woman in America. And then, of course, she was battling the liberal front that was doing the ERA.
Yep.
It was complex. Like they really did a good job of making all these women complex and understanding all sides of the issue. I just thought that was so great. So I had a difficulty choosing between the two of them. But I actually ended up choosing Unbelievable because I thought,
that was the one I went with because that show was just, I mean, my wife and I watched together, and it was great, and the acting was, spectacular. Yeah. Mrs. America, I enjoyed, although at times I felt it was a little too sort of history lesson. There wasn't enough drama driving it. Some of the portrayals were a little bit off base, in my opinion, but that's you're going to have that anytime you get in sort of a political type story. You're going to have people who are going to feel that one side was portrayed differently than in actuality it was in reality.
And the format that they were running, I mean, they're trying to tell the 10 years of the ERA. So you're right. They had a little bit of a formula that they're playing with. I just love the complexity of the characters. I thought, what a great job. And a lot of sympathy for all sides, which is very difficult to kind of hear in today's political situation.
Absolutely.
And they did, like both sides could easily be heard. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I know enough closed-minded people that they would totally beat me up one way or another.
Yeah.
But, I thought that
they'll get some hate, I'm sure.
And each episode had different directors, or at least it funneled through directors. So to keep that integrity through directors is pretty great. Well, Emmy choices aside, very busy week in the kind of industry. We've been collecting up the pieces. And this is the week. You've been talking about it for now nearly a month. It is coming out. And, what are your feelings? Do you think, what are we going to get out of Tenet? Are we going to see the new Hollywood play itself out in the next coming weeks?
I think, so this is the weekend for the domestic release of Tenet. It had a pretty decent international run in about 40 markets, 53 million, which is 13 million more than what they were originally forecasted, which is great. I mean, I really am rooting for the movie to work. It's about 67. I think it's about almost 70% of theaters in the U.S. are open now. New York and L.A. are still closed, which is a bit of a struggle. So I think what we're really looking to see this coming week is not necessarily because again, as the theme of this discussion has always been, like, everything's flipped on its head
Totally.
because of the pandemic, and so many changes that Hollywood was so resistant to make have been forced upon them. But I think the saying has always been, opening weekend is marketing's job, the rest is the movie's job. Now we're kind of looking at a time where it's really up to the movie. I mean, I don't want to begrudge Blair Rich and her team. I think they've done a fantastic job with what the hand they've been dealt, in terms of starting up, the excitement for it, then pulling back, and then starting up again, then pulling back again. So I think it's great for them that they finally have a date to hit. So I think really it's going to be the movie's job right now.
Yeah.
Sort of, are people really going to look at this and feel like this is the kind of movie I need to get out of my house and go see it?
Yeah, think about the challenge of that, just that one proposition, because, we can be snookered into a bunch of really great marketing and images of actors and, big promotional items, and kind of push in the movie theater because it's the talk of the town before the movie's even released.
Yeah.
But often the drop off of opening weekend, I mean, like a fair drop off, 50, 60, even 70% a drop off from the opening weekend to continue the next weekend. Those are legitimate numbers in the film industry, and the economics of the industry play itself into it. The studio gets paid more for the opening weekends. The theaters get paid more for the back end.
Yeah.
But the point you're making about word of mouth, think about how difficult it is for a person, like right now in our situations, to be able to, like, the movie has to be so good. You're telling someone else who's, quarantined and possibly afraid of other people, whatever, saying to them, no, you have to get out of the house and go into a movie theater and watch this movie. Yeah. It's that good. And if the movie can break that mold, I mean, we might be free in our minds from stupid COVID. Chris Nolan might be the savior here if he does that right. But word of mouth, it definitely is the issue to face.
Well, he's always been an evangelist of the theatrical experience, and he makes movies that he feels people need to see in theaters. He uses IMAX movie cameras for a lot of his shoots, so that he did this with Dark Knight. He did this with Dark Knight Returns, where there's about 6 to 10 minutes of footage that is shot in IMAX, so it fills the whole screen of an IMAX screen. It's spectacular, and it's why you go to the movies.
Yeah.
It's interesting that I was reminded not a couple days ago from an article of a moment in the 2017 CinemaCon when then head of marketing Sue Kroll got up, and CinemaCon, for those listeners who don't know, is the annual confab in Vegas where all the distributor execs get together, even the mom and pops and the big boys, they all get together. And it's really a time for the exhibitors and distributors to sort of lay it all out and say how much we're into the theatrical experience. And Sue Kroll got up, to her credit, and said, listen, guys, we need to start looking at the windows here. This is not a realistic model to keep sticking to the 90-day. This was in 2017, mind you. This is not realistic for us to stick to the 90-day window. Christopher Nolan got up shortly thereafter and said, no, that's not, no. We're all in for the theatrical experience. And that just goes to show you the power of someone like a Christopher Nolan. And I think he is so big on the theatrical experience, and I think he was pushing Warner Brothers to commit and just say, this is a movie that needs to be seen in theaters. Ann Sarnoff, who's the newly appointed head of basically Warner Media content, like all of the creators and networks in the Warner Media bag of tricks, came out yesterday in an interview with Deadline Hollywood and basically said, this is a movie that needs to be from theater. I just saw it last night, and it's a theatrical experience. So that's their MO. And I think Christopher Nolan is pushing that. And to your point about word of mouth, I think it's really going to come down to that. It's not going to necessarily be, obviously, if it's a good movie, that's a part of it. But I think in this environment, it's also about, is this enough, given all the plethora of entertainment options at my fingertips right now, with Peacock, with Hulu, with HBO Max, Disney Plus, do I need to go to a theater? And that, I think, is going to have to be a part of the word of mouth messaging. And if it were me and I was sort of sitting in Blair Rich's chair, aside from probably taking a million Maloxes and drinking Pepto like it's water, I would probably say that you would want to try to get as many screen reactions from people as possible. Just be like, oh my God, it's so great to be back in a theater. Oh, it was such a great theatrical experience.
Oh, you mean like as a post promotion,
like to keep the mode going.
Remind people that there are legitimate human beings out there that are out there doing something besides sitting in their home. Yeah, I think the separation from the digital experience, I mean, that going for theatrical is almost a necessity. I feel like Spielberg played that card for the hour and a half. He was fighting Netflix on that experience.
He was credit. I mean, I give him credit. I mean,
but it's also a legitimate argument of like no kind of BS. We're not just making content that can be consumed one show after the other, like we're doing in television. He almost, maybe his fight should have been to the content maker, the movie makers, and saying, hey, buck up, guys. We have to do theatrical experience here. We can't just be playing into the hands of this digital distribution. There's a cash to be made on that side, no doubt, but there's something happening.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to play into the populist feel of the moment by saying, listen, the industry supports so many people, from big name directors like myself down to the popcorn sellers in the theaters. This is all well and good, but at the same time, you got to convince people to sit in a theater with potential recycled air, wearing masks the entire time.
Yeah.
You have to convince them to get out of their house. And I think we're looking at, the saying is that if you can break a habit in 30 days. If you do nothing for 30 days, you break the habit. Well, people haven't been going to the theater for well on almost 90 days. Beyond that, you got to give them something to really want to get up, put on the mask, and go see it in the theater.
Yeah. But I'll say this too, like you're making this point, and it makes me wonder, we have the big digital platforms that are pushing themselves out there. So we have Universal, they have their digital platform and theatrical. Disney has its the digital platform and theatrical. Warner, like the Warner Brothers world, like it makes me almost wonder if they're trying to separate themselves from the others a little bit, because they're backing up Chris here, and the whole deal they just made with J.J. Abrams has to be something more of banking on his ability to create that theatrical need. He's the Spielberg of our day. He's telling stories in that same way. You kind of get the idea of like, it makes me wonder if Warner Brothers is taking a different trajectory and saying, oh, the theatrical experience isn't going to die. We're going to recreate it, and we're going to invest in the filmmakers that do.
Well, I think, again, this goes back to the Ann Sarnoff interview from yesterday. The way she's positioning it is basically, we have all these pipelines now. So we have the theatrical experience, we have HBO Max, we have Turner, TNT, TBS. So any creator, filmmaker can come to us, and Toby Emmerich, who's the head of Warner Brothers, can say, I think this feels theatrical. Or he can say, I don't think this is theatrical. Go pitch it to HBO Max. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're necessarily trying to delineate from everyone else. They're just leaning harder into the idea that we have this bucket of options before us, and we don't necessarily have to go full in on theatrical every single time. My counter to that would be like, well, you kind of had these options before. Like, you've always had TBS, TNT, and Turner. The only difference is now you have a direct-to-consumer service. That's really the only difference here that we're looking at. And it's only because the paradigm has shifted so much with the relationship between the exhibitors and distributors that they feel confident enough to say, okay, now we can say, well, we're not necessarily going to release this theatrically. And it's a way to start off the conversation with the J.J. Abrams of the world to say, listen, you come up with these ideas, we'll find a home for it. We have so many options. We have so many weapons in our palette now. We'll find a home for it.
And maybe that's exciting because the blockbuster world has kind of ruled Hollywood for so long, and you had to have gotten lucky and get in on the inside and been one of the select few that can hit the blockbuster numbers over and over again. Yeah. You almost wonder if this opens up the playing field to the filmmaker, indie or not. Like, there's opportunity now to create films, and even the blockbusters can't be blockbusters anymore. So we're going to judge movies by a different matrix than just the total dollar count and opening weekend or whatever those old numbers are. We just can't, we can't judge a new way.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it goes back to what we've been constantly talking about over the course of the last few weeks is like, even though there's a lot of disruption also creates opportunity.
hmm.
And to your point, I think there's just more, they're going to need to fill the pipelines with content. So it's going to enable filmmakers who may not necessarily have, because prior to the COVID outbreak pandemic, there was this feeling that unless it was meant to be seen in a theater, studios weren't really going to invest a lot of time and money in it. Now it's like, well, maybe we could do like a month-long theatrical release and then bounce it over to HBO Max.
Yeah. So, I mean, the digital play out inside the studios, right?
Yeah,
They're creating more channels for that too.
yeah,
It also makes me think of like just the opportunity or maybe even just need for marketing. You know, LA and New York are shut down, so you can't get the two major domestic audiences into the theaters necessarily and get the numbers we want to. But also recognize like maybe we're going to go for like the per box office. I mean, per screen number,
yeah,
and look at it that way. And what a different need for campaign. I mean, you're going to hit people in Midwest states and Southern states in a very different way than you hit the coastal cities, but you also be making a different appeal.
yeah,
If you're doing per screen, you might release films in a different schedule than
yeah,
you're used to. Wisconsin might come out before Los Angeles. That would be insane. And old Matrix. But like, no, if we're just trying to build up the per screen experience or the theatrical experiences wherever people are willing to go, you can still find winning pockets. But the studios are going to have to kind of step up a little bit and break out their marketing.
yeah. I think this is going to
Market.
afford an opportunity for a lot of the studios to start being more micro targeting with their spots. Now they've typically done this digitally, obviously, because it's easier to micro target digitally. But you made a great point. So, you know, New York and LA are still closed. Those are obviously where a bulk of the people who work in the industry live. And everyone who works in the industry loves Christopher Nolan, not only because he's such a great spokesman for the business and the theatrical experience, but also because he just makes such damn cool movies.
Amazing movies.
And
Yeah.
most of his stuff is wholly original. It's not based on previous IP. So it's something that really excites a lot of people in the industry. So they know who he is. They know what he's made. Your average couple in the middle of the country probably doesn't know who Christopher Nolan is.
Mm-hmm.
So the messaging has to be different. So New York and LA, for example, would potentially be from the Academy Award-winning nominated director of Christopher Nolan. It would be the full name. In the middle of Texas, it might be from the director of the Dark Knight trilogy. So it's sort of little things like that, to your point about boosting the per screen average, and that being more important than just the overall box office, because it's not necessarily going to be you're going to win the weekend, because they're going to win because there's no other movie out there. It's a matter if they're going to have that steady run where it's going to be like, oh, this movie's really worth seeing. And again, you sort of break it down by market. And I think that's a real important opportunity for the people who work in marketing to really start focusing their energies on sort of finding the areas and the messaging that's really going to drive audience versus sort of trying to one size fits all, which has been a typical campaign strategy.
So here's the thing. So, and this goes to my past, but it goes to your clients, is this thought of like, what would the movie trailer then be? Because at Trailer Park, you know, back in the day, we were looking for the one trailer. Like it was the trailer, and it was released on Apple a lot digitally in a lot of theaters, and the same trailer everywhere. You wonder if the trailer making experience, right? The trailer producers are gonna have to start thinking differently of like, is this the director of Inception? Inception, what does that have to be different than?
Well, here's the thing. I think it's a lot of it's intuitive, I think, but I'm a big fan of sort of setting a strategy before you go. I mean, a lot of the feeling in Hollywood these days is it's almost like ready, fire, aim is basically sort of
throw spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah, see what sticks. And that was sort of the idea when I was at Fox. It was sort of like, okay, we got to just throw it, see what sticks. But I think now, because it has to be so well thought out, I think it does need to be more strategic. And to your point, I think that's going to require a lot of thinking on sort of the creative and the trailer producer's part, and sort of figuring out what messaging works best in different parts of the country. To use a point, like I just mentioned, your average person doesn't know who Christopher Nolan is.
Yeah, here's what
They're going to need to see.
Here's what needs to be done. Like when a theatrical a movie is sent off to Europe, they hire a trailer editor in the UK, they hire a trailer editor in Europe, and they recut the film for that marketplace. Yeah. Here's how we say it in the United States, which is total crap, but this is how we say it. We're like, we make a trailer for LA, New York, the rest are flyover states. Like, it doesn't matter. We're going to capture the East and West. Right now, you can't capture East and West. So welcome to your new America strategy, domestic strategy, which is divide up the U.S. like we did divide up the European Union and start making trailers and pieces there. What a great opportunity for the younger wannabe trailer companies.
Oh, yeah.
Recognize and have a pitch and be able to put some stuff out there.
Yeah, to put some real thought into it. I mean, I'll use sort of Avatar as my case study as an example. And this was obviously, that was 2008, not 2009. We were doing focus groups in like Sherman Oaks, because that's quote unquote outside of LA. Yeah, but it's really not outside of LA.
You can throw a rocket at Sherman Oaks from LA.
Knows who James Cameron is. But we realized, because we went to places like Denver, Pittsburgh, outside of the LA, New York bubble, nobody remembered who James Cameron was, because he hadn't made a film in 12 years. Mm-hmm. So what did we have to do? Well, our last trailer was basically his resume. It was all to come see the movie that this guy, who all these movies you remember, from Terminators to Titanic.
Remember Titanic? It was a little movie we made back in the day. Yeah.
Lies. I mean, all these awesome movies that you are just fantastic. Yeah, come see this movie. And I mean, listen, that's where we kind of are right now. It's sort of like, you can't just rely on what your gut instinct is in LA and New York. I mean, one of my former bosses at Fox, we used to say, movies are made by people who live behind gates and work behind gates. And 90% of the country does neither. So that's where the opportunity, you're 100% right on that, Tim, for younger sort of upstart trailer companies to come in and say, hey, we're based in, I have editors in Pittsburgh. So I got people who know the Midwest market. I don't have just a typical New York editor who's going to cut it and use the same sound effects, la, 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 la. I got a different perspective.
Yeah, the script writing has to be different. The editorials. A lot of the selects might be the same, so you can cut down. And you can,
there's still universal aspects of film that just touch everybody, no matter where you live and what your political persuasion is. But this is an opportunity to really start sort of getting people where they eat, sleep, and live, because ultimately that's what is going to need to happen. Because it goes back to a point I've been harping. If a lot of the exhibitors think that if they can just say, hey, we're open, but we're going to wear masks and spray disinfectant everywhere and expect people to show up. No.
It might not be where people live too. It's just got to be the executives thinking through the different markets as well, and knowing what the experience is. Right now, the whole industry has a diaspora. We're everywhere. Like, LA editors are now in Dallas. Like, nobody is sitting where they used to sit anymore. Yeah. Yep. And that might be part of the opportunity as well, is take that up. Speaking of movie trailers, I'm going to hit one of your favorite campaigns out there, because I know you love cinema. So this Love Cinema campaign has got to just be just pulling your heartstrings, Keith. Isn't that just exactly what you're looking for?
Okay. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you don't, because it really wasn't a great campaign. Love Cinema is, I believe, a campaign launched by exhibitors to get people back in theaters. And I have to say, I'm in all deference to anyone who worked their butts off on this campaign, I was not impressed.
Not only were we not impressed, I have like a text message string about just how your real feelings are about the Love Cinema campaign.
And I'm going to keep this G-rated. I don't want to start throwing F-bombs as much as I'd love to, but I think I applaud the effort. I'm gonna try to be diplomatic here. It's real work.
It's real work to get something like that done.
It's real work, and I don't want to.
Where does it miss the mark?
I think it misses the mark. If you go on the site itself, it just plays a sizzle of movies, of people looking at screens, and I'm like, come on, guys. We're supposedly the heartbeat of creativity in the world, and this is the best you guys could come up with.
Well, here's where I think it misses the mark, right? I already see that sizzle reel on my computer screen. I already see that sizzle on my television set. How does this draw me into the movie theater?
Yeah.
Just because I'm looking at movie clips and by the way, I'm a 50-year-old man. Like I've consumed some of those in the theater, but most of them on video. The generation below me only knows them digital.
Only knows it.
So you're basically promoting a digital library, not a theatrical.
And it was just, it was comical. Like I tried to go in and click and see what theaters close to me were open. And guess what? Nothing came back. So it's like, you're getting me excited about this and nothing's open. But here's the bottom line. If it were me, what I would have done was I would have gone to sort of the big names in the business. I would have gone to Scorsese, Spielberg, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, Tom Hanks, and I would have got them to start talking about just being in theater and what it means to go to theater. It has to be emotional. Mm-hmm. People have to feel. That's why horrors and comedies are such great theatrical experiences, because you feel those movies viscerally. And one of the most memorable experiences I had from a theatrical experience, just to give a real quick example, was when I saw Titanic in the theater for the first time. When that ship's ass was up in the air and was about to break apart, you could have heard a pin drop in the theater because everyone was so transfixed to be like, holy shit. Like, that's what they have to sell. That's what they have to remind people of.
Yeah.
If they just try to throw clips at people, it's just going to be like, man.
Like you, and it gets me thinking about, like, there's a lot of parallel to almost like a religious experience. Like we know where we are at the time when something happened and our life was changed by what we saw in the theater.
Yes.
So for me, I was living in Los Angeles. I just moved down there within a few months. And I was working with whatever I was working with at the Gap or wherever. And I went to a midnight movie because I was living there by myself and I went to go see, late movie, went to see Rudy. And after watching Rudy, the next morning I got in my car and I drove to Burbank Boulevard and I knocked on every single door. I'm like, oh, that's how you succeed.
Yeah.
And that movie literally changed my life and changed my career because it inspired me to go do something different. And movies, that experience or these testimonies of that experience is what's going to make people remember the importance of film. Consumption of media isn't it.
Yeah, and here's one more thing I just thought of, and I have to bring up because it's ridiculous. In the copy run, they say our lights are on. Come on! Everybody knows the theatrical experience. You get excited when the lights go down. Play off that. It's very simple. I just pounded the table. This is how passionate I feel about this.
Totally missed the mark on the lights are on.
Yes, I just think it's such a.
That's like leave the theater. When the lights go on is when you exit.
You go for the exits when the lights come on. It's basic marketing 101. It's like you're shooting yourselves in the foot. It's just.
Next week, we will have the Hollywood Breaks version of the Love Cinema campaign all worked out for you. So Keith can go to rest easy.
Yeah, so I can,
You're kind of hit on some from the experience. And this might be just wrapping it up, but like we made the point a couple of weeks ago, the end of celebrity. New York Times came out with that article about how the paparazzi, they're following the influencers. They're not following the celebrities anymore. So there's something happening, and probably likely because in a cancel culture, the celebrities have too much to lose to be out doing things.
Well, it's also
there's nothing to lose.
Yeah, you also have to think about the influencers that are, and we're mostly talking largely about TikTok influencers and some Instagram, obviously, but it's because they still make their content. Like, they are the director, writer, producer, star of everything they put out for the most part. Your typical actor needs a director. He needs a script writer. He can't make his own content for the most part.
Yeah.
So,
Will Ferrell does a pretty good job of kind of.
Yeah. Well, there are some, don't get me wrong. There are some who are very good at it.
Yeah.
And can sort of shoot from the cuff and are just entertain. Like, perfect example: Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. They are entertainers. They know how to get people. Anything they put out is just entertaining. They just know how to entertain.
Yeah, they're having a fun time. But it's that evolution from that person on the pedestal celebrity, untouchable experience, because the only way you're going to be seen in that position is a crew of people turning you into that movie star.
Yeah.
Into this new
there's a machine
economy that has people that are breaking through based off of their creative ability. and a mass appeal. But that switch over and the voices that are now relevant changes the game for a lot of people. Like, what the economy is, how we're going to market them, what we're going to push out from them, and how important they become. Because I'm almost afraid that like they're literally going to be famous for 15 minutes. Like the amount of influence they'll have over a lifetime will be very segmented into smaller bites. Yeah. And who's going to come out of this influencer marketplace into something, the next evolution?
Well, then the big elephant in the room is what happens with TikTok. The clock is ticking on TikTok because September 19th, 20th is a deadline issued by President Trump to sell or be banned. So what happens then? When most of the TikTok celebrities are US based.
Yeah, and I heard, so I think this TikTok was one of the sponsors of the VMAs, and they pulled out. I mean, it's not happening. So yeah, they're definitely in for a fight, or MTV pushed them out, whatever that breakup is.
We didn't talk about this, but it's almost old news at this point with the rapidity of how the news cycle moves. But Kevin Mayer's resignation, 3 months after starting, like he left Disney to take this job, and now he's out of work. He's out of a job because he's like, he didn't say it, but I think basically he's like, I don't like where this is going. And, so that's not what he signed up for. He didn't want to get into a, international battle.
Or I think he was put in place to actually do the separation legitimately and probably hit more roadblocks than necessary. Yeah. And who knows if the federal government's helping or hurting that situation, because you can solve a lot of problems from the inside instead of outside. But what's interesting is the amount of people making content on TikTok, and the news cycle is telling you it's not right. TikTok's doing something. If Facebook isn't get as much scrutiny as TikTok is, and we know Facebook breaks the privacy rules all the time, what do you think TikTok's doing? Like, there's something happening that is a fair warning that needs to be broken up in this way. Yep. So very, very interesting playing field. And the evolution of our industry is moving into something that we have to capture. TikTok might not get away with it now, but give it a couple of years and there'll be another one that will get away with something.
There'll be another one that'll come in and it'll become the new hot thing. And
yeah. There you go. And we probably know what it is now if I just looked at one of my 13-year-old phones.
You would have a better sense on sort of the teenage generation. I don't have teenagers yet.
Yeah.
Who knows what it'll be when they become teenagers?
Right. All I know is the parents are making TikTok movies. TikTok is not what's relevant anymore. Right. That's all I know. That's like the works.
Exactly.
All right, my friend. Listen, we're going to wrap this up today. We'll see you next week. And then there's a special episode we're going to record on September 16th. We're going to be with a live studio audience. So that's going to be fun for us. We'll decide if we want to do 2 recordings that week or 1. But for those of you that are watching this, we appreciate your viewing, whatever platform you're watching this on. Also a reminder that we are putting this out there in podcast. We're going to use the RevThink channel to launch it, and then we'll spin off and make our other channel there. If you're listening to this on podcast, we appreciate you. Watch the video series. You can listen to it and watch it. You can do both. So in all your binge watching time, please just join us and subscribe as you go along.
To you where you want it, when you want it, and how you want it. That's
you can listen to us jogging. You can watch us in the car, whatever works for you. We don't. Keith, thank you again. And
always a pleasure, Tim. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And we'll see you next week.